Daily Tech News Show is made possible by you, the listener. Thanks to all of you, including Reed Fischler, Larry Bailey, Michelle Sergiu, and William Serback II. On this episode of DTNS, ARM cancels Qualcomm's license to use its designs in a game of Chipkin. Get it? Air taxis take another step toward reality, and Scott Johnson weighs in on why Netflix shut down its AAA game studio. This is the Daily Tech News for Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. In 20 Los Angeles, I'm 20 Merritt.
Okay, Tom. From Studio Animal House, I'm Sarah Lane.
Here in Salt Lake City, I'm still Scott Johnson.
And I'm the show's producer, Roger Chang.
I'm just going to keep saying 2020.
You're just excited to go on vacation tomorrow, Tom.
It's possible. It's possible that I'm both frightened and excited.
Nothing wrong with that.
Just get, vacation punchy.
I haven't started packing yet.
Oh, geez. Well, then you've got work to do after all this.
Yeah, I do. I can't find my USB-C to XLR adapter either. I might have to run to Best Buy and just buy an Elgato.
Oh, my Lord.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, sometimes I go to Guitar Center just to do something like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's just go.
Yeah.
I could go to Guitar Center, actually. That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's not that much
Guitar
farther.
Center is great for these sort of things.
All right. Meanwhile, while I ponder that, let's start with the quick hits.
Adobe has made its Fresco drawing app available for free for all its users. This puts it squarely up against Procreate and Clip Studio Paint. Fresco supports touch and stylus support for iPad, iOS, and Windows. It was previously free, but had some features locked behind a subscription. So starting now, Fresco goes from $10 a month to free for all of those features, technically making it cheaper than Procreate's $12.99 one-time purchase price.
The information's supply chain sources say Apple has scaled down production of the Apple Vision Pro in the past few months. Supposedly, the company that does the final assembly of the Vision Pro has been told to prepare for a possible wind down in November. This could mean a new version of the headset is coming. It could also mean that they're not selling enough. It's possible the ramp down doesn't occur if sales pick back up, or if the new version ends up using some of the same chips.
Google announced a new tool to watermark AI-generated text, expanding on its Synth ID technology for images. The system embeds supposedly undetectable watermarks into all sorts of AI content. The move is part of Google's effort to enhance transparency, and it isn't alone. Meta, TikTok, are a couple other companies working on similar watermarking solutions to label AI-produced content as well.
Bloomberg's Mark Gurman reports that Apple's making progress on its upcoming M4 MacBook Air and says it could possibly arrive in early 2025. Apple's also reportedly planning to refresh its entry-level iPad at that point. And don't forget, Gurman also says the new M4 MacBook Pro, iMac, and Sarah, M4 Mac Mini, supposed to launch next week.
Any day, please. I'm begging you, Apple. I'm begging you at this point. On my knees, begging you.
My knees.
Just do it. NVIDIA says it also resolved a design flaw in its Blackwell AI chips that were causing production delays. CEO Jensen Huang confirmed that the issue has been fixed, letting the company's B200 GPUs ship by the end of this year. These GPUs are designed for large-scale AI applications and are expected to have better performance and energy efficiency overall.
ARM has canceled Qualcomm's chip architecture license. This is both a big deal and likely not to have any effect. So we can explain why. The architecture license is used to design the chip. Qualcomm could still use the instruction set, so it wouldn't have to stop making ARM-compatible chips. It would just have to stop using ARM's own designs. That's kind of a distinction without a difference for its majority of its line, because most of Qualcomm's chips use both. So unless something changes, Qualcomm has 60 days to stop using that license, meaning it would probably have to stop selling its chips to anyone. However, there's a little twist in here. Qualcomm just announced the Snapdragon 8 Elite. We mentioned that earlier this week. It does not use the ARM architecture design. So Qualcomm very clearly was trying to get away from having to pay this license fee. ARM wants Qualcomm to pay more for this license fee because Qualcomm bought a company called Nuvia. They use a lot of what Nuvia did in the laptop and PC chips that Qualcomm makes. So the Copilot Plus PCs, for example. Qualcomm tried to say Nuvia had a license for the design, so we're going to use that license to make all of these Nuvia designed chips. And ARM said, no, Nuvia had a license for that design for their level of chip making. Qualcomm makes a bigger deal out of chips. We need more money from you if you want to keep using Nuvia's license. And so they're going to court over that on December 16th. This move of suspending Qualcomm's architecture design license entirely is a move to put pressure on Qualcomm to settle over this before December 16th. So if you want my opinion, this is probably all going to resolve likely before December 16th, certainly before the end of December when the 60 days is up, and Qualcomm won't lose its license. They'll just agree to pay a little more. They'll pay a little more than they were paying ARM, but it'll be less than ARM was asking. They'll agree on a number. They'll slide pieces of paper back and forth across the conference table or something like that. That's how I think it works.
Oh, I love that idea. How much do you think this is about the fact that that ARM as an architecture, as a chip structure, as as the new hot thing on stage, pushing x86 aside a little bit in desktop, mobile applications, and everything else, it's having a moment. Is that a factor here? Is that what's causing that sort of price hike and fighting and all that?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. It certainly makes the pot bigger. And when there's more money to fight over, especially when the money just starts to grow like it is now for ARM, there can be more fights over the new way of divvying things up. You often see it happen at the other end too. Like we've been seeing more fights with cable operators over distribution as the pot diminishes. So on either end of that bell curve, you get the fight. That could be part of it. I think the other thing is that ARM realizes that Apple and NVIDIA and other people have been making chips with their own architecture. They may be ARM compatible, but they're not using ARM's architecture designs, and they're worried about losing that revenue source, and they're trying to preserve that revenue source.
But I mean, wouldn't Qualcomm be like, well, we're not getting along. Let's not use your architecture anymore. Design architecture.
But they already have chips that use the architecture, right? So if they don't,
so this applies to existing chips, not just future chips.
Existing chips that they're still making, right, with that design. Like, yeah, they have one chip they've announced that doesn't use the design, and ARM knows that. So if they had to stop using the design by the end of December, the majority of their revenue would have to go away, or more likely they'd have to scramble and redesign all of those chips that they're currently selling that do use the ARM architecture, not to use the ARM architecture. That would cause a world of problems. Nobody wants that within Qualcomm, and ARM knows it. So ARM up till now, Qualcomm has said, see you in court. You know, we license out our technology to other people all the time. We see Apple in court every year. We're like old friends, not a problem. And I think ARM was like, we're going to tighten the screws and make you want to settle this faster.
It just feels like a battle that brewed quickly. Do you know what I mean? Like I could be totally wrong on how the timeline went, but it just seems like it's just lately. Every other story, even on this show, is like, oh, something's happening with ARM, something's happening with Qualcomm, something's happening here and there. And it feels almost not quite AI levels of like, whoa, watch out, the train's moving.
Yeah.
But it's enough to notice, and it's enough to, I guess, ask the question.
I mean, a lot of it is also AI,
That's true.
Because it's driving the need for more chips. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think ARM's licensing arrangements were appropriate to a market full of people making them for phones. And the licensing arrangements are being strained, and ARM's business model is being strained because now it's being made for servers and laptops and PCs and more kinds of phones and more powerful phones that have NPUs. And so, I think ARM has also been a kind of a football being tossed around between SoftBank and then going public and then not going public and all of that. So I think that puts a strain on it too.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. Like, there's also the other factor here is everybody always wants to throw talking points around about mobile, but it's also a lot of other kinds of devices this time around. We're not just talking about desktop and then mobile and then the next single category. It's like all over the place.
A mobile chip, not that long ago was like, oh, it's simple. It's not a desktop. It's not a gaming PC. Mm-hmm. It's, just for mobile. And now mobile devices are supposed to run our lives.
This is going to push more people to RISC-V. I'm not saying this is going to make RISC-V more popular than ARM, but it certainly causes people to look at this and go, man, dealing with ARM can be touchy. If we go to an open standard like RISC-V, maybe that's better. RISC-V has its own issues with capabilities and stuff, but it's looking more and more attractive. And now I definitely understand why Qualcomm has been toying around with RISC-V and promoting it as an open standard, because it's a better alternative than going to court all the time. Unless you're a Qualcomm lawyer, then it's great.
Then it's great. You guys are having a heyday. Jeez.
Well, if you're a Qualcomm lawyer, you're probably no stranger to being in helicopters. I'm just gonna.
That could be true.
I'm just gonna guess.
Great transition.
Thank you, Scott. I appreciate that. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, issued new rules on Tuesday that recognize vertical takeoff and landing, or VTOL, air taxis as a new type of aircraft. Very new type of aircraft. Not a plane, not a helicopter, something else. And issued final rules for operating them and how pilots should be trained to fly them. The new category is called power-lifted aircraft. Delta has been working with Joby and United with Archer to develop the air taxis and integrate them into their systems to bring passengers to airports. They're not the only companies trying this out, but we've got some momentum here. And as somebody who lives in Los Angeles and works from home and doesn't have to do a lot of commuting, so I'm not going to complain too much about traffic, I say take us to the sky.
Yeah. No, the idea with these airline partnerships is you would be able to check in at a local air taxi depot, get your bags. They would just air taxi you all the way into the airport, just like making a connecting flight. And you would just skip right over all of the traffic. You would skip right over, a bunch of other waiting in line. You still might have to do some security screening there. I'm not sure how they'll implement it. I don't think they know how they're going to implement it, but it's a big deal for these airlines to be able to speed people in and say, oh, I'm going to fly United. I'm going to fly Delta because I can do that and not sit in traffic for 90 minutes. This approval, this is the first new category the FAA has announced in 80 some years. The helicopter was the last one. This is a big step forward to saying we're going to lay the groundwork for regulatory approval of these sorts of vehicles.
And I don't know. I don't know too. I do not have a pilot's license of any kind. But for anybody who's
did anyone assume you did? You did?
What if I did?
I would love that.
That would be worth telling people about.
Yeah,
sure.
I would fly with you.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm a pilot all night. Yeah, I just fly
go.
all night. No, but for anybody who's saying well, isn't that what a helicopter would do? It's similar to that, but these new, the new jurisdiction flies like a fixed wing plane, not like a helicopter. So it is a different thing. Meaning, if there's a helipad or whatever, it's all going to be classified differently.
Is it vertical takeoff and landing and stuff still? Like it's
it takes off and lands like a helicopter, but flies like a fixed wing plane.
Oh, okay. So more drone-like, I suppose.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, they're like big giant drones in some ways.
It really is a big giant drone.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
I'm like, let me in there.
It's a whole other category of, I guess you're in danger driving the car to the airport, right? So it's not that different. I mean, probably even less unsafe.
Oh, you mean like
danger-wise?
For anybody who's thinking that this seems dangerous?
Yeah.
I mean, you're in danger at all times.
Because people are going to ask that question.
I haven't looked it up. I'm going to guess you will be safer. I mean, I guess we can't really say until we know the safety record and pilots get certified and they start flying. But I'm going to guess these end up being safer than driving in a car. For sure.
Probably, right? Like I in the same way that planes did. But there's still that human human reaction, which is like, oh crap, I'm in the air. I can't control any of this.
If someone else is controlling it, not me. Yeah. I'm driving my own car. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Well, and as this technology advances, we start getting into like the Waymos of the sky, where it's like, well, I mean, the company is just doing it. There's no like person who's, being weird at the wheel and putting me in danger the way that, I might feel in a car on the freeway.
There, it does get confusing.
You still have to trust the company, of course, but
It does get confusing because there's a lot of autonomous VTOL efforts, some of them from these same companies, but they're not always trying to push to that yet. Although I know there's some plans to launch that sort of thing in Dubai and elsewhere. So I do think this is the first time I've looked at one of these stories and said, oh, that's the kind of regulatory approval you need from the government to make this actually happen on a time frame versus like we're just 5 to 10 years away. Now it's like, oh, now the clock starts ticking. Now you can start to say it just needs commercial viability.
You can actually hit your goals.
Yeah, it needs actual places to take off and what are the air routes that it can take and all of that, which is still a lot. Right. But it's less of a like, will they even get approved to do this? This makes it look like, yeah, they probably could.
It's crazy to think. My mom was 6 years old when the FAA did their last thing. She's 86. Right? That's crazy to think about, right? Like that is a long time ago.
My mom wasn't even alive.
Right? Like pre-mom for you.
Yeah. I mean, barely. Sorry, Mom, to blow up your spot. But yeah. Like,
no, I don't know what else they would have. I guess I don't know what else they would have approved as a new category in the meantime. So it's not like I'm saying, oh, the FAA should drag their feet on new technology. That's not what I mean. But it is wild sometimes to think as quickly as technology and society moves forward, sometimes you don't need a lot of other stuff between, big major changes like this. This is a big one, a big deal. 80 years.
I'm with KT Data on this, though. We need one of these to look like a Jetsons car. And maybe even have the noise.
Yeah, I'd like that. Then you have to hear that song every time.
I mean, think about how much people care about what their cars look like.
Yeah.
Right? Like once we go, up to the sky, it's like you still want the Lambo.
Yeah, when I own it or it's
you.
autonomous and it's my autonomous freaking Airbus thing. Yeah, then you're gonna have you're gonna want to do colors. You're gonna want to do all those things.
Yeah,
I'm for this future.
I flew the cool air taxi today.
I just want it to take me to LAX faster than
I know.
Everest. I don't care what color it is. For now.
I'm like, my old Honda Civic from 1984. All good. Just
I wanted to change its mind. I wanted to start to go to LAX and then go to Santa Ana instead because that's a better airport.
Yeah. Or you just end up at Van Nuys and you're like, but I'm not flying private.
Yeah, you're like,
why am I here?
Oh, no. So far from home.
Yeah. Just one telling detail before we move off of this story. We realized that we needed to schedule the car to come pick us up to take us to the airport tomorrow at 4:45 a.m. And our reaction was, oh, good, the traffic will be late. Not, oh, that's a horrible time of the morning. Not, oh, it's going to be hard to get up. It was like, oh, good, it'll be a fast ride to the airport.
Yeah.
You'll get there quick.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's LA for you. But that's an early day.
Indeed. Well, if you're having an early, late, or otherwise day, you can always find someone to chat about with at our Discord. Go check our Discord out by linking a Patreon account. Become a patron at patreon.com/DTNS.
On Tuesday, we mentioned that former Overwatch boss Chaco Sani, former Halo executive Joseph Staten, and former God of War art director Rafael Grisati have all left Netflix's AAA game studio. So, Scott, you're here with us now. What do you think this means for Netflix's game strategy going forward?
Well, they left because they folded it, and the big question is, why did Netflix decide to fold their first and only and barely 2-year-old AAA game studio? I guess maybe at first we should say what that means. AAA typically means big, expensive, large project type games, stuff with a lot of 3D graphics, a lot of realism, typically large teams, 100 people on a team, that sort of thing. That was a big deal when they announced it, and it was a small announcement. They didn't make a huge deal about it, other than these are top-notch talent we're pulling from these other companies, and they're going to come here and make something really special. That's kind of where it ended. They had no projects to announce at the time of the forming of the studio or anything like that. So we were all sort of just left with, We know who these people are, so we kind of have an idea of the kinds of games they might make, but we really didn't know. Jump ahead a couple of years, the whole thing gets dissolved. Those guys are off to do other things. And to me, this is, I kind of have a couple of theories here. First, I think it's consistent with what Netflix has done prior to this with their game strategy, including mobile, including what they do with Netflix, the app, and Netflix on TV. But I also think this has a lot to do, and they haven't said, but I think it has a lot to do with timing. The industry is in a dip at the moment, and not profitability-wise, but they're preparing for quarters where the profitability is going to be harder to show on paper. And it seems like, and I kind of agree with them, this is a really weird time to ride that storm out. If you don't have a ton invested already, meaning you haven't already made 3/4 of a massive release, then I think this is a kind of let's cut our losses now and let's see where this thing goes. And then we'll rethink what our strategy is. And maybe we don't need to make a AAA game based on Bridgerton. We used this earlier as a bad example, but Stranger Things or whatever IP, because I do think that was their main strategy. In all of this, I think Netflix's goal was to say, let's take our popular IPs and then we're going to turn those into other media, whatever they may be. And in this case, games. Let's make a big AAA, just for fun's sake, let's say it's an MMO version of the Stranger Things universe, which actually sounds kind of interesting. But you're talking about possibly hundreds of millions of dollars to invest in such a thing. And I think that they probably have very smart analysts who went, we're coming to the tail end of that series. The popularity is also coming to its end. It's not like people are chomping at the bit for this, and the industry's in a slump. So why would we do this? And I think that they have the pockets to make this decision, and it fits with what they've done already. Tom and I have talked about this countless times on here and TMS segments and everywhere else. Netflix doesn't care if we all have expectations of what game announcements are. What they care about is test it here. Try a little of this. Let's do a bit of this. Everyone will make fun of our mobile strategy. We don't care. We're trying it. We're trying to get some data. We're trying to get some information. What happens? We're making small investments. And I think that is actually the smart thing to do right now, given the current climate. I think that the purchasing forming of that studio was maybe a little bit premature, but it was also a decision made at the height of when things were popping off just post-pandemic. So I'm also not surprised that they tried it. Will we see something come out of this ever? I do think so, but I think it will be smaller projects and more focused projects. So instead of saying we're going to make a giant action adventure out of that television universe of some show or something, they might make a point and click adventure set in the Stranger Things universe. Or they might do something with Bridgerton that's, I don't know what they do with that. I keep bringing that dumb one up, but whatever it may be. Yeah. Sure. A first-person shooter set in the Bridgerton. Tom, don't tempt me with a good time. That's a great idea. But all of that being said, there's no promise of a cash-in here, and the games industry is in some weird flux right now. So I actually think they're smart to cut tail when they did.
And they're not cutting their mobile studios.
No.
They kept those, so they must think that that's worth spending the money on. I'm with you. I think Netflix's game strategy has been, we're going to slowly build up these games until they start to catch people's eye and we get more and more people enjoying them. And once we reach a certain number of people enjoying these games, then we can split it off as an extra tier or even a separate service, depending. They want to make more money off these games. They also want to use the games as a way to retain people who might otherwise cancel a Netflix subscription. They're not there now, but they're getting there. They are getting more and more games, and there's more and more things that people look at and go, oh, okay, yeah, this is a fun little game. I'm going to play it. I think they got ahead of their skis with the AAA game studio. Netflix does have a studio for television and movies, but it doesn't always use it for all of its original television and movies. And I think that's what they realized is we don't need a AAA studio yet. We can still have other studios make games for us. They can make the Bridgerton first-person shooter for us. We don't need to have a game studio to make that happen.
Yeah, and in the case of Amazon, great that you brought them up. They're still operating that division at a bit of a loss. The studio canceled some pretty high-profile projects and have published a couple, and they're also publishing some third-party stuff from Asia. Lost Ark, a Korean-made sort of Diablo-like MMO, did really well for them, and that's a Amazon Games published game, at least here in the States, and I think Europe. And they also just published something called Throne and Liberty, another big MMO. Again, Korean developers. They seem to be pretty in deep over there. And then they just essentially relaunched a patch that I would call a relaunch studio game that they built. They built an MMO called, I just forgot the name, New World. And this New World Avernum patch is basically a relaunch of that game. It had a very hard struggle at the beginning. It has done better over time. It's now on consoles with this launch, as well as this new PC patch, which is taking it to new heights. They seem to be all in. They seem to be like, well, we're operating at a loss, but we're also Amazon, and we can do this little experiment. They do it with Twitch. They lose money on a lot of things. So I think they're going to stick with it. And I think that gives a little bit of a burr over there at Netflix to say, don't give up on this entirely. These things ebb and flow. Where the money is isn't always where it is yesterday. It might be somewhere else tomorrow. So I hope they all kind of stick with it, because competition never hurts, and the gaming landscape needs new faces. So, we'll see what they do.
Yeah. I don't think it means the end of Netflix gaming by any stretch, though. No. It's just a change of direction.
Yep.
All right, let's check out the mailbag.
Let's do it. This one comes from Toby, referencing the segment on Tuesday's show about celebrity face recognition. Toby says, I don't feel like this is just about the celebrity. I think it's a win for the consumer who may be duped by the fake ads using the celebrity face to falsely claim endorsement of their scams and their schemes. If the result is that there are fewer fake ads, this is a good step. Toby says, hopefully now there's less chance that my great aunt will click through a fake ad, lose money, or get threatening contact from a pressured, indentured sales team in some far-flung call center, for example.
No, that's a great point. It's not just about protecting the celebrities' likenesses. It's about protecting people from being scammed as well. That also doesn't mean that Meta isn't going to use this facial recognition data for some other reason, but they're saying they're not. And this is a good thing to prevent. I don't want your great aunt or your great uncle to get threatened by indentured sales teams.
No. Second cousins, once removed, none of them. Scott Johnson, we might be second cousins once removed. Who knows?
Sure. I don't know. Maybe.
But when we're not here doing the show, what are you up to?
Well, the Lanes and the Johnsons, they go way back. But I'll tell you what does also go way back, and that is my show that is entirely about the video game industry and issues like this Netflix thing, along with all the fun stuff, like what did we play and what's cool this week and what's coming out next month and that kind of stuff. If that sounds interesting to you, check out our roundtable show called Core. It airs on Thursdays and goes up wherever you get your podcasts right after that. More details can be found at frogpants.com/core.
Patrons, stick around for the extended show. Good Day Internet. T-Mobile raised prices for people who had a lifetime price lock, but they were still alive. We're going to discuss this.
Whoa.
Ooh. Well, just a reminder, you can catch our show, which we do live Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC is when it all goes down. You can find out more at dailytechnewsshow.com/live. We're back doing it all again tomorrow, discussing if generative AI will change the way we contact and interact with our political representatives.
The DTNS family of podcasts, helping each other understand.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.